Okay, we were finishing up last time the idea of chibuta kever. That's where we ended up last time, about the conclusion of what happens to a person in the grave. And I said, I promised, I feel bad to skip out about speaking about the worms that happens in the grave. I didn't want to miss out such a prime opportunity to speak about something so important. So as a result of that, we said we would speak about I only meant in the beginning of the shir, I didn't mean the whole shir, but I think I scared off some people from coming back. But we're going to speak out just the last, after the chibuta kever, what the idea of rima v'tola'ah is, okay? Now, rima v'tola'ah literally means worms, or different types of worms, if you will. Now, what's the difference between rima v'tola'ah? Okay, so first of all, we have the Mishnah, we have two Mishnayot in Pirkei Avot. Where is this mentioned, this idea? In two Mishnayot. First of all, one Mishnah says, marbe basar, marbe rima. The more literally a person eats basar, the more worms he gets in the grave. Now that we'll explain later. It's not the literal translation. That's in Mishnah Bet Chet, if you want. And of course the famous Mishnah, which they read when a person is being taken to his grave. It says, Akavi ben Halal Omer, Yistakal b'shlosh dvarim, ve'en et habali deichet. There are three things. In order to do that, mi'ayin bata, from where did you come from? A tipa srucha. You came from a little tipa srucha. Ve'lan et ha'olech. And where are you going? L'makom, afar, rima, v'tola'ah. The Gemara says, the Mishnah says, where are you going? To a place of dirt and worms. Rima, v'tola'ah. V'lifnei mi atid l'ten din v'cheshbon. And you're going in the future to have a din v'cheshbon od me'at soon. Okay, these are the two main places. There's one other place, which is a Gemara in Shabbat, which I forgot to pencil in here. But basically the Gemara says, Kasha rima lemet, kemachet lebasar chai. The Gemara also says that a worm for a dead person is as difficult as a needle is to a live person. Meaning as painful as it is to have needles punctured in your body in the wrong spots. I guess acupuncture doesn't seem to hurt. But if you do it in the wrong spots, it hurts at least, right? So rima is the same stature as having a needle. These are the places where you find this idea of rima v'tolah, and I just wanted to speak out how this connects to our sugya. First of all, let's start from the beginning. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh in Parshat B'Shalach, our Parsha this week actually, he speaks out in Perek Tet Zayin when it talks about the man. It talks about in the man, the man that fell from the sky, the food that fell from the sky, the man. It brings it, people who left it over, it had a rima v'tola'ah. It had a rima v'tola'ah. And he speaks out, what's the difference between this, the rima and tola'ah both mean worms. So what's the difference between this type of worm and that type of worm? So he says, rima is an external worm, meaning it's something that comes even though it's not necessarily putrid. Even though it hasn't gone off, you could still end up getting a rima in your man or in your food, right? Something external that can fly in from outside. That's what a rima is. Or not necessarily fly, it could be crawling from outside, but doesn't necessarily come. As opposed to tola'ah, tola'ah is a type of worm that comes from within the food, meaning when a food gets bad, when it goes off, as we all know, you can find cute little worms crawling around inside of it. Coming inside of it, like maggots or these types of things that come from that grow from the bacteria of the thing. Happened to you?
I bought a tin of soup.
Oh wow!
And I kept it for a while. And
kept it for a little bit too long. All the maggots from inside. Now this is based a little bit, even though we know that it's been disproven. If there's a million answers for this, I'm not going to get into this. But there's a little bit of spontaneous generation until about Madame Curie came around about 150 or so years ago, 120 years ago. So there was an idea of spontaneous generation that things grow from the food itself. So it could be that's what he meant by tola'ah, coming from the food, growing from within the food. We knew that that's also considered usually external bugs. Okay, there's about 5-6 different answers for that type of idea. It's not for now right now. But at least this is the idea of the difference between rima and tola'ah. It's just a double word, so I just wanted to explain one's from external, one's internal. One's from within and one's from without. Okay, that's what the Mishnah says, that a person gets in the kever. Okay. Now, basically it's like this. This tsa'ar that a person gets from a rima v'tola'ah, right? He gets it where there's a big difference between a tzaddik and a rasha. Okay? Tzaddikim do not receive the rima v'tola'ah. Just like we said with chibuta kever, when a person gets pounded in the kever, in the grave, we said there's a lower level for someone who's a tzaddik, or it doesn't happen at all, or very, very minimally for a tzaddik, for a good person, as opposed to a rasha, who's the other extreme, and there's everything in the middle, right? He gets it very, very hard. The rima v'tola'ah, the worms, is very similar to this idea. It's on the same type of things. For example, the Gemara about Metzia brings in Pei Dalid about Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Reb Shimon, the one who sat with him in the cave, that he actually was in an attic, and he was not alive in the attic, and he was there a long, long time, and nothing happened to his body. His body stayed fully intact. So we see this idea that it can happen. The Gemara in Shabbat, Kuf Nun Bet, brings from Rav Achai. Rav Achai, they opened up his kever and they found his body completely and fully intact. There was nothing wrong to his body. So sometimes when people are big tzaddikim, they don't get any type of rima tolah. They doesn't get any type of things that happens. Of course, there's also the famous Gemara that says, kina, someone who's a bal kina. A bal kina is merakev atzamot. That's what makes a person rot in the grave. When a person, the more he's a bal kina, the more of a jealous person he is, then the more he ends up having rotten body. Meaning, if you take it on a simple level, then a person who is not a mekana, someone who's not a jealous person, ends up staying pretty intact in the grave. There was really a maisa that they unburied a certain woman who, whether she was religious or not, wasn't so clear, but they unburied a woman, her body was fully intact. And they asked Rav Chaim about it, and they looked into it, and they realized that this woman was more or less mute, or she was a vegetable from the age of like 12 or 13 or 14, was a very young age. So Rav Chaim Kanievsky said the reason why is because she was never mekana anybody. She didn't have the capabilities, I guess, to be mekana anyone, but because she didn't have this mita of kina to have it, so that kept her body intact and not another thing. Okay, so that's just this first aspect of what we call Rima v'tolah, what happens? And there's a difference between tzaddikim and Rishaim. Rishaim get it much worse, much more painful, a lot more to the kreshbon, mamish to the one. Ad kedei kach that mamish goes to the detail. Let me just read you here. The Shevet HaMusar. Shevet HaMusar is that sefer that I read to you from the first year already that nobody likes. Shetzadik med b'mitat neshika. That he talks about Rima v'tolah, but he says, but a tzaddik. But a person who's a tzaddik, he dies with mitat neshika, with a kiss from a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore, ein nidon berima v'toleha, he doesn't get any worms. A person who dies with mitat neshika, in the way, like Moshe Rabbeinu, Aaron, but you don't have to be on those levels. Some tzaddikim also get mitat neshika. Then he doesn't get rima v'tolah. Why not? Why doesn't he get worms if he dies rima v'tolah? Why doesn't he get worms if he died mitat neshika? Kilu Hashem took him out in a very pleasant way. What's the reason why? Because we've mentioned before that when a person dies, the malach hamavit comes with his sword, which has on the tip of it some poison. It has a little bit of tip, and that's why we dump all the water that was in the room when a person dies. So the malach hamavit is what causes the worms to come about, because of the poison or the putridness that comes inside of the body from the sword of the malach hamavit, from the touch of the malach hamavit. That's what causes the worms to come, because he is contained with this poison that's within him. But if he dies, hopefully a mitat neshika, in a way that's a positive, nice, pleasant way, if we call it, of dying, in a positive way, he never comes in touch with the malach hamavit, and therefore, as we say, he's good to go. Okay, he doesn't end up getting the rima v'tolah. Nothing ends up happening to him. That's really what the Shevet HaMusar says, and it's based on the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, "Ayidei tipa shel malach hamavet umed v'gufo masriach," and therefore, when he dies with the malach hamavet, it seems to be okay. Okay, that's what it says. He also brings down the Shevet HaMusar in a different place in Perek Aleph. He brings that his body is very bahir, very clear, through the neshama that's within it, and therefore there's no rikavon, no rotting, deterioration that occurs to the body. Okay? Now don't forget, the Chavetz Chaim does write in Zechor LaMiriam, he writes down in a sefer that even if a person is a tzaddik and he's a good guy and hopefully everything's doing, don't get too comfortable. He says, don't think you're too comfortable, because it says to be in a makom tolah, you're still going to be in a place with the worms. So Bezrat Hashem, you're not going to, one is not going to have any earthworms going through his eye socket, hopefully, but at the same time, he says they're going to be swimming around you. So at least a person should know that he's still in a place of thing, and therefore it's an important reason to do tshuva. I want to read to you an Orach Chaim HaKadosh. Orach Chaim HaKadosh in Parshat Bechukotai says a beautiful pshat to explain the psukim. In Parshat Bechukotai it talks about the brachot, the good things that happen to us, and then afterwards the klalot, the bad things that happen to us, as a result of being good or bad. And he says, he brings down, it talks about ve'alachti, and I'm going to give you gishmeichem b'itam, in yashanoshim, you get a lot of food, parnasah, v'chulei, all these nice things. And then, but what's interesting, and some people ask this, is it doesn't talk about a word about Olam Haba. Why doesn't it talk about the next world? If we're talking about being good, and we are Jewish, and we believe in the next world, so why doesn't it say one word about the next world? So there's different answers. The Or Chaim says, it does talk about the next world. He says it really does talk about the next world, what's going to be the next world. What does it say? It says, V'natati shalom ba'aretz. What does it mean, V'natati shalom ba'aretz? So listen to what he says over here. I on purpose wanted to read it because he just says, the Shema of Hashem is Shalom, and the time that a tzaddik dies, so Kadosh Baruch Hu comes up to him and he gives him mitat neshika. He dies from the kiss of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. What does that mean? So he says, when a person dies, Yom HaMita hu madveh gadol, the thing that scares everybody. Of course, that's why some people are scared to come to the Shia. Asher belev kol chai akos amar, because everybody that has that bitterness within him, and he doesn't know when the day is going to be, bechol shleimut haolam hazeh, he's comfortable here, and then he has to remember Yom HaMita ve'arva kol simcha, and it takes away from his simcha. Uma gam she'en lo gvul rachok, and he doesn't know how long, when is the day of his death, when's it going to be, what day. He doesn't know, and it leaves him, as they say, in the dark. Right? In the dark, just like one of the makot in this week's parsha. It leaves him in the dark, he doesn't know. So therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives him promises for a person who does what he's supposed to be doing. He learns, he tries to make a seder, he tries to do the mitzvot, he tries to keep everything that he needs to keep, and these are the promises that he gives. And he says like this, V'natati shalom, he will have peace, Ushchavtem, when he goes to die. Ushchavtem is from going to sleep, but that's what most people think. Ushchavtem, you'll be resting okay, but over here he's referring to resting in peace, right? As they say, right? It's referring to when a person goes to the grave, ushchavtem, shener be'avot, shchiva, v'sod davar. He says, what's the sod? Ki nefesh keshemargesh bekriva toor. This is something we spoke about. When the nefesh feels the light getting closer to him, when he feels that much closer, he feels a warmth. He says it. Not what we spoke about, or the near-death experiences, yeah? Tichsof v'tinatek mimkoma. He wants to get to that light. He wants to get closer. He wants to find himself connected to that warmth of the light that's over there. And because of this enjoyment, because of what? He's so interested in being there, he has an interest to get closer and closer to this light, to get closer to the Shekhinah. And he doesn't feel any pain. He enjoys it. It's enjoyable. He wants to get closer and closer, and almost, as we say, voluntarily dies. But as we know, he's not committing suicide. But the neshama obviously is interested in getting closer and closer. And that's what he says. V'natati shalom ushchavtem. When it means v'shchavtem ve'ein machrid, you lying down. When a person goes to sleep, when this tzaddik goes, Sheina is Yitziat Neshama. He goes as Neshama ve'ein machrid, and ve'ein machrid means and he's not afraid. So simply we say you go to sleep. When you read, we all read the psukim, it means the person goes to sleep and he's not afraid of all the enemies that are going to attack him. Says the Or Chaim HaKadosh, who speaks a little bit more esoteric in the world of Kabbalah. He says the idea is ushchavtem, when he goes to the kever, to death, ein machrid, he's not afraid. Nothing is going to scare him. Who's the machrid? Ein machrid ela amalach hamavet, is the angel of death. The angel of death is the one who's the fearful one. He's the one that gives us fear, like I just spoke out. He's the one with the sword and the poison on the end that puts an end to our life. And he says he's not afraid of the Malach HaMavet. We spoke this out during the near-death experiences, that a person who's very connected, who's good, he doesn't have the fear. He dies in much more of a roga, of a manucha, of a complacency. He's much more complacent. But some people are afraid because of the sicknesses, etc. And he promises them, and that's what these psukim are coming to tell us, things are going to be okay. And here we go to what's connected to us. What's v'natati shalom? He says because a person is made up of all the elements. We're made up of different elements. We know we're made up of earth, water, etc. We're made up of all the elements. And he says a person, when he dies, he goes and all the elements go back to the earth. That's why we're called Adam. A person is called Adam from Lashon Adama, right? We're called Adama because we come from the physical earth. That's where we come from. Adama is Adam Rishon. That's why it's called like that. And that's why Adam is to go back to where you came from. You have to go back to your sources. And when a person goes back, he decomposes and becomes part of the elements. He goes back to where he came from.
So that's the shleimus.
That's the shleimus of that. The shalom. No, so he says the shalom will be that when that happens, you're right, you'll have a certain shleimus of going back there. But even when that happens, and you won't have to be afraid. What are you afraid of? Mamish, what we're speaking about today. When a person has rima, when he has the tolaim, the worms going within his body, he's scared. It makes him fear. It's painful. We said the Gemara says it hurts. It's painful. But if he's a tzaddik, if he does things right, then he won't have any problems. And he brings from Rabbi Eliezer, who I quoted to you before, and he says, and he's relaxed and everything will be fine. And even though it says kasha rima bebasar amet kemachad bebasar achai, he says what that means is from the fear and from the pain and from how much it hurts. And he says kol nivra yargish kefi shir tchunato asher konan yitzra. Everybody feels it only according to the level of what you deserve. A person who's a real rasha, a bad guy, is going to feel it very hard. A person's in the middle, a little bit. A person tzaddik doesn't feel it. Everybody according to his. And he continues. That's pshat in the pasuk. And I'm finishing. 1 second. You want to ask something? Ve'ishbati chayara min haaretz. The Psukim also give you another bracha. There will be no bad animals in the area. Simply speaking, that Baruch Hashem, the Arabs will stop doing their craziness. Right? That's a simple understanding. No more chayot. No more chayot rot. No more crazy animals around us. That's a simple understanding. Says the Orach Chaim, it's referring to a continuation of what he said before. Hu ruach hatuma anikret chayara. It's referring to the ruach hatuma, that it will take away from the ruach hatuma, that will come away because we will be on such a high level that yom shemet Rebbe batal hatuma, it will take away from the thing. And that's what he says. Ve'omer v'cherev, and this I'm finishing. V'cherev lo ta'avor be'artechem, and a sword will not pass within the land. What does it mean? Because the sword is referring to who? The sword of Malach HaMavet, of the angel of death. The angel of death carries a sword with a poison tip, which we spoke about before, which leads to these worms, which I mentioned to you before. And if a person dies b'mitat neshika, if he doesn't get that, or he doesn't get this sword of this poison tip when a person dies, and we know, we spoke out and we saw experiences of people who when they died, they saw things and were scared and they were fearful because maybe, and we never judge a person on what level he was, but it came from a certain level of being able to see the Malach HaMavet. So if a person is on a certain level, you will not receive that poison tip sword, and as a result of that, there won't be any Rima v'tole'ah. And that's what he says at the end. He says, Shelo yigach harbo shel Malach HaMavet b'gufo shel tzaddik. You won't be able to touch him, and he'll die mitat neshika, straight with a connection to Hashem. Hashem will pull out his neshama, and that's the way he dies, in a very, very, very type of way like that. You want to ask me?
No, just not clear. If there's such a thing as Rima that doesn't hurt, because there's an idea of the Adam Afar, that a person goes back.
That's right. He always goes back to the Afar, and how much he decomposes it a little bit depends on his level of tzidkut. Right.
Okay.
That's what comes with.
But is there also decomposition that doesn't hurt?
No, the decomposition doesn't necessarily as much have to hurt. Yeah, the rima v'tolah is the extra worms and more and this or whatever. That's what causes the pain. It's the way it's done. In other words,
decomposition itself isn't the problem
necessarily. No, not necessarily. And the big tzaddikim don't get any decomposition because they're on the higher level. But middle class people like us, right? Probably that will happen most likely. I venture to say, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you necessarily have to have the rima v'tolah. It doesn't mean that has to happen. Right? Okay. Like I said, the Maver Yabok is a Sefer Kabbali, but he says there's a gzera exactly how many worms a person is going to have when he's in the kever. You should know. That's what it says, Marbe Basar, Marbe Rima. So what it means when we say Marbe Basar, Marbe Rima, this is Tiferet Yisrael, says in Mishnayot over there, more meat means more worms, and it's a little bit basic, right? Because you eat a lot, so you're big fatso, so now you're going to have a lot of worms. It's not that simple. What it means by eating meat is the more you are immersed in oil hamazeh, in this world, the more you busy yourself with the extras and all the extra things, and you focus on this world and how much extras there is in this world. Basar is always a representation of overdoing yourself, being over gluttonous, and not necessarily with food, with everything, with every tava, with every lust. So such a person is marbe tola'ah. He gets more tola'ah, which is what we spoke at. Mamish, to the number of how much a person is obsessed with this world as opposed to thinking for the future. That's the person who's going to eat it, as they say. Yeah, they're going to get it, right? You want to say something? Yeah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kol nivra.
Is there any other things that say, like you hear these sipurim about some people, they see like a nahash in there, like, I Akbarim and this kind of things.
Yeah, well, first of all, that a little bit the Gemara in Brachot talks about different things. We did speak about that one time. I don't remember if we were here. We were speaking about different things that people might see or how their experiences when they die depends on what level of a person, what they are. That's what you mean at the time of death, you mean?
No, when they get buried, besides worms and things. Like things that are in there.
I don't know. So in the kever, I don't know.
I'm saying that if you saw
I could check.
things that you read.
Please no, check.
Like
That's specific. In the kever, I don't remember. I know b'shat mitah there's such a thing at the time of death, but in the kever, it's
I had this thing like there was a shahed. I think he was selling treif meat, and they were trying to bury this guy, and then every time they went, there was full of rats and things, and he just said, just throw them in there. Like they kept digging the kabarim.
A different place and they couldn't find it.
Yeah, and he said that's what he like.
Wow. Yeah. If you can find me that source, that'd be interesting. I don't remember seeing such a thing.
I didn't know if there's, like I've heard different sipurim, like about Nahashim, like here the Chazon Ish, like there was some guy, I can't remember what he was doing. And they did the same thing, they were digging up different kvarim. And there kept being one nahash that was in the hole when they would finish digging.
Very good.
And he said finally, like after the third time,
just throw them in.
Yeah.
I understand. I hear you saying, okay.
No, I didn't know if there was anything that talks about
Bleed at all, check. I know how to check. I don't remember seeing anything, but if you have a source for me, I'd be very interested to see it. It sounds very good. It's very connected. No, it's very good. I'd be interested to see. Anyways, let me just finish with two small nakudat when it comes to this idea. Is the Vilna Gaon on the pasuk. It's a confusing pasuk. Leiv sameach yitav ge'eh. I'm not going to read the whole pasuk, but he basically says we are made up of 4 parts. Now this is a little bit of a Kabbalah subject, but he kind of brings it in a very simple way. That we're made up of skin, meat, bones, and in between is gidim, is sinews. I think sinews is the right word, right? We're made up of 4 parts, right? Skin, the flesh is the basar, the gidim is the sinews, and then the bones. We're made up of 4 levels, which is really, like I said, we have 3 layers of skin. If you're getting details, you have the epidermis and the inside, yeah, for sure. There's more than that. But I'm staying simple, right? For simple people. But anyways, it happens to be a very Kabbalah subject, because in Kabbalah also there's 3 levels and 4 levels of how thick things are. Okay, but al-Kapanim, that is also connected the nefesh, ruach, and neshama. There are different levels of renewal. Your lowest level, the outside, the skin is the nefesh, which is the nefesh of Ahamtib, which is something similar to our physical thing. The ruach is in the middle, is the basar. The meat is the ruach, is in between. The neshama is already deeper. It's always deeper, it's the sinews. And chaya yechida, the highest, is the bones. And that's why the bones usually stay intact. Okay, it has inside of it a moach, is the calcium, the marrow of the bone, and that usually stays intact because it's connected the chaya and yechida, which is the super high part of our neshama. Those are the highest parts of our neshama. And he brings out there, let me just 1 second, and he brings out there that when a person goes to the kever, all these things slowly decompose, okay? It disappears first the skin, and then the meat, he said the basar, and then afterwards the sinews, and then eventually, to a certain extent, the bones. Also have a certain amount of disintegration. He goes through the process which we spoke about in the past. I'm not getting into it. But at the same time he brings, and that's the din that comes on him, okay? That's the din that comes on him during this time. And it's the same idea that he brings from the Rima Tola'ah that actually makes his body decompose, okay? All right, that's what it is. We're just going to finish this subject before we move on to the next with one nakuda, which we spoke about a little bit, and I was waiting for here just to mention one thing. We mentioned that even after a person's dead, chas v'shalom, ever to think that he's just a body. There's no such thing as just a body. Even after a person's not alive anymore, there is a bit of the neshama that's left. The havla degarmi we mentioned. You remember that? The havla degarmi is the spirit within the bones within a person. Meaning a person which stays with him to a certain extent forever. Now again, with proper rishayim, and probably they're usually disconnected. Yeah, that's a luz, right? Nachaluz, right? Nachaluz, very good. Right? The luz bone, that's a little bit of a different idea. We come back in Tchiyat HaMeitim, in the resurrection of the dead, which we want to speak about, hopefully one day. That we speak about, I'm waiting for it, but at this rate it's going to be by Tchiyat HaMeitim already, by the resurrection. But in the resurrection text we have this bone, which you're talking about. It also comes from the spirit that remains within the body. We brought many rayot, many proofs. That's why a person davens by kever, by a grave, because we still hold that there's some type of spirit that remains by the person. Of course, as neshama, as ruach, the higher levels are all upstairs. They're already in olam haba, which we're going to speak about Bezrat Hashem coming soon, and all these nice things. There's a little bit of a nefesh that still remains, and if you remember, we spoke about 3 or 4 different ideas about this nefesh that remains by the body. Okay? Now, that is relevant for what we're talking about today, because we also have a problem here. Over here, we're saying that the nefesh, that the body gets hurt by worms within the body that goes with contain it. Now, take that to some scientists, don't think you're loony, right? Worms and a dead body doesn't feel anything. What are you, crazy? But based on what we're saying, the idea is this, because there's still a little bit of the roshim, the rishima, the nefesh that's left over in the body to a small extent. There's a little bit of the nefesh within the body that remains to a certain extent, and that itself gives over a certain type of pain that a person feels. You understand? That's what it says in the Shevet HaMusar. It says, the Pasuk in Yov says like this: Ach b'sar alav yichav, a person's flesh hurts, v'nafsho alav te'avel, and his nefesh on him will have avelut. When it's talking about a dead person, his basar hurts, his meat hurts, his body hurts, v'nafsho alav te'avel, and his nefesh is sitting avelut in mourning over his body. It doesn't make so much 100% sense, but the idea is because the nefesh is still connected to the body a little bit, and it feels the pain of what's going on, which means that not the physical body per se, scientifically speaking, will be in pain, but this nefesh that still remained on the body, that still has some connection still to the body, that itself still feels a little bit of an anguish, of a pain of what happens. And the Medayik, a beautiful diuk. Okay, we quoted before, kasha rima lemetz, it is difficult, a worm to a dead person, kemachat lebasar chai, like a needle in a live person. But to hear the words, it says, kasha rima lemet. Rima is difficult to a dead person. It says just a dead person. But when it talks about the live person, it says, machat, like a needle to a basar chai, to the meat, the flesh of the chai person. It doesn't say to the basar of the met. When it talks about the dead person, it doesn't say basar met. It says met, just as the word met. When it talks about the live person, it says basar met, the flesh of the flesh of the live person. You understand? You follow what I just said? The flesh of the live person, and by the dead person, it doesn't say the word flesh. It just says dead. The dead person, because by a live person, when a person gets pricked, it hurts, it's painful. Over here, it hurts. It sends a message up to the nervous system, up to the brain, and it's painful. You feel the pain. As opposed to by a dead person, it's not the flesh, the body itself that feels the pain, right? Rather, it's the nefesh that is around it that feels the anguish of the fact that it has these worms going all over its body, coming out from one socket and in the other. You understand? That's where the pain is obsessive. That's an answer for what they ask in the Mishnayot over there. The Midrash Shmuel and others ask in that Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. They ask, how can it be that a person feels pain when he's dead? It doesn't make sense. But this is a beautiful answer. This is the direction that the Shevet HaMusar says. The Chafetz Chaim says, this is the word the Chafetz Chaim. I'm going to do 1 second. The chelik ruchani in the body, lo agashmi shel haguf. The chelik ruchani within the body. The Chafetz Chaim says those words in Shem Olam. The chelik ruchani in the body certainly feels a certain type of pain like that, and that's why a person feels this minimal type of pain. And with that we understand, and with this I'm finishing this, I'll take your questions. The Rashba asks in a tshuva, someone asked him a question, they said they wanted to, the Rashba again is a Rishon. That's what it means this tshuva was written in the 1200s, the late 1200s, early 1300s more specifically, and it was asked that they wanted to take a body with his fathers. He wanted to be buried with his family. Okay, now back then El Al was still didn't make it. Okay, they still haven't been around. They had other planes, but they didn't have El Al still. So they had to know and figure out how to take him. It was a long trip, a couple weeks at least. I don't know if it was Mamash Eretz Yisrael. You're saying it could have been a different plane. Right? No, I don't know if it was Eretz Yisrael Dafka. I'm not sure if it was Eretz Yisrael. I think it was to be Bekever Avotav. I think it was to Bekever Avotav. He wanted to be buried with his family in a different city. Okay, but it was a 2-week trip.
Which country was he in?
I really don't know. Maybe it says in there. I didn't pay attention. But they didn't know how to get him there. So he said, what you can do, and this is a big header, he allowed them to put some type of sid, like a potion ointment, which will decompose the body faster. Within a day, within 24 hours, it will be completely decomposed, which is not so pretty. But the reason why they did it is because if they could travel this 2 weeks, within 3-4 days, it's going to not smell so nice. It's not going to be pretty. It's not so very nice. It's our father. It's something we care about, and it wasn't so pleasant. So they'd rather do it this way, and it's more nice. It's more appropriate. So that's what he did. When I read the question, I said, "No, this is an easy one. I know exactly what the Rashba is going to say. He's going to say it's Asr Gomer." I was probably going to say, he said it was mutter. He said it's 100% okay. He said there's not a problem to do it, and he says in order, kivrei avotav. It says to be shaguv leishech. He says this word de'ein basar hamet margish be'izemel, because he said the basar, the flesh of the person doesn't feel it. Because he doesn't feel this pain. So everybody says, "What do you mean? It feels worms." So some people say only worms, but the idea, no, the Khatam Sofer says what we just said, that he feels a pain when he sees worms in his body, and because of his punishments, is all his bad things that he did, and now I see all these tolaim all over the place. It's so depressing, and all because of all my bad actions, and it hurts the nefesh, it hurts it. But to decompose his body in order to bury him in a good place, or for good reasons, or for his benefit, to do it for his benefit, that the Khatam Sofer says, based on this Rashba, the Rashba who's a Rishon, says is permissible. It's permissible because if it's for the sake of something positive, so then it's totally okay. The Birkei Yosef for the Maran Achida brings this also in Siman, Shin Samet Gimel. Okay, so we see based on all this idea that even though we're talking about pain, it's not mamish physical pain, it's a pain ruchani, it's a more of a spiritual plane, which is similar to what we spoke about by Chibut HaKever. When we're talking about the body in the grave that gets beaten back and forth, it's more of a physical, not necessarily a physical pain, but more of a spiritual plane, which the nefesh is related to, and that's the end of that nakuda. You want to ask something? I have two questions.
Just one this time.
Huh?
I have a lot of questions, but...
Well, how about one? Afterwards, what you want.
When you go to sleep, obviously, somehow there's a death over there.
Very good.
What stays? What stays in the bones?
Right, that's a good question. So we spoke a few shirim ago, we mentioned that, it's like I mentioned before, there's a neshama, ruach, and nefesh. I'm saying words in Hebrew, I don't have such good English translations. Neshama is the higher spirit, the ruach is the interconnection, and the nefesh is the lower spirit. Okay? You follow what I'm saying? It's a long explanation, but Lamasha, every animal has a nefesh, that's why it's alive. We all share something with animals, that we're all alive. But we have something above them that's called the neshama, which is a higher spirit, which an animal doesn't have. You follow? You know what I'm saying? Like something higher above. And we have something interconnecting, which is the ruach, like a neck connects your head to your body. So the ruach connects the two together. You follow what I'm saying so far? Okay? So when a person sleeps, only the higher spirit goes up, the neshama. Your ruach and your nefesh stays with your body. You're still alive, you're still breathing, Baruch Hashem, things are still good. You don't have to have any other type of thing. Because it's only this higher spirit which is hovering, let's say, over your body, that's what goes upstairs. You understand? That goes up for a little while. But when a person dies, so then even the lower part goes up. So that's why his body's not functioning. You understand?
I had an experience where something went up and I was looking down. What went up and what stayed?
You had that experience?
A long time ago,
You were sick or something?
No, I was fine.
Okay, so speak about it. But we had two classes just a while ago where we spoke about people who get those experiences.
Just once. I tried to bring it back again.
Don't try to bring it back again. That sounds dangerous. No, that happens to people who something happens to them, like dehydrated or this or something like that. But you saw your body underneath you and stuff like that?
I felt that. I didn't see what I felt. I was...
So that's where it comes from. It comes from this idea, yeah. If you will, I'll show you the old shirim in the past. You'll see we described exactly what you're talking about in detail. Okay? Yeah.
What's the time period of this Prima B'Tolah?
How long does it take? It sounds like it happens pretty soon right afterwards. It even says within 3 days it can happen. Within 3 days. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It depends on the Chibut HaKever and the Tolah, but they usually brings that happens within the same time period. I don't know if it's together with the Chibut HaKever or right afterwards. It's very unclear how it is, but it's brought together. It's brought in the same. In Masechet Chibut HaKever, that Masechet it talks about the Rima B'Torah. It talks about the things. Chibut HaKever is when a person gets moved around in the grave when it happens. So, or it happens simultaneously or directly right afterwards. It seems to be happen in the earlier periods of death.
It's not just stomach decomposition.
No, it's not stomach decomposition because even good people can get decomposed. You have to be a big tzaddik not to get decomposed. That's what I'm mentioning to him. Not everyone's Moshe Rabbeinu or the tzaddikim or even the Nevi'im or whatever. There's certain cases, that doesn't happen. They had the Maisa with the Chidah. When they brought the Chidah, his body was intact. And they moved the Chidah from wherever he was. I don't remember where he was, but they brought him here to Eretz Yisrael. He's buried here in Eretz Yisrael. As you do, or Mordechai Eliyahu was involved. So the body was 100% intact. Okay, not everyone's the Chidah. I'm saying he's gonna.
The one thing is that they say dust we and the dust will return.
That's right, 100%.
So how come if we are eaten by the worms, we're not dust?
The worms are also part of the dust. They're part of the dust. It goes to the dust. They're also there.
What about the reverse process? So embalming rather than the sid.
Okay, embalming is not something that's a Jewish thing. Now I know by Yaakov Avinu it was done, and a lot of people ask the question how it was done. But we're not so into embalming. What? By Yosef also. Yosef and Yaakov. I know over there it was, and people say if it was a real embalming, but embalming is not necessarily always something that we try to, that we necessarily do. There's a big question in halacha when you're allowed to, when you're supposed to, when you're not. But we do.
Is it tzadfur? There
is an interest in the body being decomposed. Meaning, if you deserve to be decomposed, get decomposed because that's your tikkun. That's how you're going to fix yourself up. Yeah. And if you're not doing it, now again, Yaakov Avinu wasn't going to be decomposed anyways. It says Yaakov Avinu lo met even. He didn't even die. Whatever that means. You follow? So I'm just saying, if a person's meant to be decomposed, that's part of his way of getting to Gan Eden. That's why we don't try to embalm. We don't do that.
So what happened in cold climates that, the body would stay frozen? In Siberia, of course, it's going to stay frozen almost.
Well, he stays in the snow all the time, because in the snow, you're saying?
I guess in Northern Europe, it's still probably thaws.
Yeah, there's some people who don't. Their bodies don't decompose. I'm not saying it's not a good thing. To do it, there's some people I know. One person I know. He lived what he preached. Walt Disney was very makpid. He wanted to keep himself frozen. He did not want his body to be decomposed. This is the man of cartoons, right? He was the man who wanted to live forever. Now, unfortunately, he couldn't do anything about himself. Mickey Mouse is still around, but he's not around. So what did he do? He's very makpid. He wanted to be frozen to keep me around until they figure out the way to bring people back to life. He's still frozen somewhere in some things. So it's like
cryogenics.
That's it,
Cryogenics? Cryogenics. So again, that's what these people try to live, and we don't believe in this. We hold that you have to go back. You need to be decomposed, and because we know that you're coming back, which is mamish the subject I'm speaking about this second. That's what I wanted to speak about today, really. But since we know we're coming back, we're not scared of it. It's okay. It's good to be decomposed, and Bezrat Hashem, you come back. That's our tikkun. The tikkun for the chet is we get decomposed, and tchiat meitim, you come back. Yeah, you want to ask something? No. Have just one, and then we're going to continue. Okay. Yeah. Isn't that bad?
It's good. No?
Yeah, it gets you there faster. Yeah, you shouldn't take shortcuts. I don't recommend the shortcuts, but the Rashba seemed to say in this case it was okay.
So what do we do for everyone?
Yeah, no, in this case it was necessary. We don't need to do it anymore. Nowadays, a person wants to go to Eretz Yisrael within days there, 2 days, right? I tell you, it was a 2-week trip over here. It was a very serious thing. I really wanted to speak at least an introduction today to Gehenna and Gan Eden. Okay, the last subject, close to the last subject on this whole enterprise that we're speaking about here, is the next world, which is Gehenna, the purgatory. I think the proper English word is right, and Gan Eden, which is, I hate this word, paradise. There must be a better word, right? There's a better word, no? Gan Eden, what? The Garden of Eden. Okay. Olam Haba, we know what Olam Haba is, the next world. There's a special schut in the next world of what the person's going to have. So let me give a little words of at least introduction to before we start this subject. This introduction will take at least another shir, maybe even 2. But I feel it's very important because it's the fundamentals of everything we're speaking about here. So I feel like it's necessary to speak these things out in order to give us a better understanding of Gan Eden and Olam Haba. Now, most people here, I'm not so worried. I know you all believe in Olam Haba and Gehenna and all these things. So I don't have to convince you, but at least I want to make you feel it, A, and B, for people in the camera who might not be here, then they should be able to hear a little bit about a few interesting ideas here which need to be done. Okay? We all know that life begins and ends from death and birth. Okay, from birth and death. We start in our mother's stomach for a good 9 months, crunched up in a little ball, right? Our head is in our ankles, and there's reasons for that, by the way. It's not coincidental. Al Pi Kabbalah, there's an idea of the head being by the bottom of your body, right? When you start, before you open up into a thing, you're fed by your navel. You're fed by your navel through your belly button, as they call it. That's how you survive. That is not really life. That's just a passive life. That's something that happened automatically. Death also is something that happens to everybody, and it's something that happens. Real life is what we call the bridge in the middle. what's known as the Gesher HaChaim. That's why he named the Sefer Gesher HaChaim, Rav Tukachinsky. Named the Sefer Gesher HaChaim, the bridge of life, right? Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tzar me'od. Maybe some of us are familiar with the song. The whole world is a very narrow bridge. What that means is, it's a bridge that's very short. There's not much place to turn left and right, but we are in a bridge, and that's the way we live. We understand that that we are only in a bridge, not an end. This place is not a place as an end in itself, but it's a place that's a connecting point between a beginning and an end. It's a bridge which connects us between a start and a finish, and that is life. Why is that life? Because over here it's up to us. Over here it's up to us. Who you're going to be born to, where you're going to be born, and how you're going to look is not up to you. That's, as we all know, the chromosomes that you were given. That's automatic. Real life, Chaim, is only when decisions are made, when your own personal decisions are made, when you decide what to do and how you decide to lead, your life. So I want to expand on this issue. We have 7 minutes. Yeah, I'll take 7 or 8 minutes just to be able to just bring this out. The famous mashal, but I'm just going to extend this mashal a little bit. Some of us might be familiar with it, some of them not. That a person who is in his mother's stomach, he's there for quite a long time. 9 months could be extremely long time. Okay, compared to 80 years, it's not so long. But when a person's in there for 9 months and you're bored out of your mind, you have nothing to do there, right? It just takes a long time till a person finally finds himself. It's completely a very slow process till he becomes out. So here we have a picture, and this is an idea that's brought in Chazal already by the rabbis. They bring this idea, but again I'm expanding on it a little bit. And it's the idea of two twins who are in who are in a mother's stomach. Two twins. One of the boys, he's a very rational guy. He's very advanced, very intelligent. He's much more rational. And the other one, he's much more into, the tradition, as the word goes, right? He's much more in tradition, a little bit more, if you want to call it primitive, or how it is. And here we have a discussion between these two boys that are happening. The rational boy is telling him, bro, this is it. And this is all there is to it. We're here for however long we're here, and when we leave, that's all there is. There's nothing else after this world. It's pretty depressing, but what can we do? We got to make the most out of it. At least we're comfortable here in this embryonic sac. We're very warm. There's fluid all over us. We get fed straight to our stomachs. We don't even have to chew. Things are great here. It's very comfortable, and Baruch Hashem, we get to enjoy ourselves as it is. That's the first brother. The other brother, who will call him the Mamin, the one who believes, he says, it's not true. You should know, even after we leave Mommy's stomach, we're still going to be around. We're still going to be alive. And things are still going to be good. So the rational guy looks at him like he's fell off and something's wrong. That's physically impossible. When we leave the stomach, there is no more of our navel. Our navel's not here. This embryonic sac that's around us, that's protecting us from the elements, is not around. We can't physically live outside. Don't you know that? What are you, a fool? Right? Are you an idiot? Of course you can't live when you leave outside. We can't, and we all know that's what happens when a person's born. It's one of the most miraculous events that occurs. I don't know any doctor who's involved in birth cannot be a complete, absolute ma'amin in a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Everything that was closed opens, everything that was open closes. Right? Your mouth, that's why the baby cries, because it was sucked in it, and the navel gets closed up automatically. Everything that happened, everything just does a complete switcheroo within seconds, as we all know. That's why it's such an important thing that everything should be okay within seconds. And he says it's physically impossible. And the other brother says, you're right. I agree. I don't know how it's going to work. He's not a doctor yet. Maybe soon he'll be if his mother's happy, right? Eventually I might get there, but right now I don't know how it's going to work. But I have a Kabbalah. We have a tradition that it's true, that even after we leave Mommy's stomach, there's still a beautiful world out there with oceans and rivers and trees and birds. There's a beautiful world out there that even beyond this little world, this world that seems so comfortable, but we'll be standing up on our legs, in your legs, we'll be able to walk around and do things and be able to be much more free. Now, be'emet, I know you guys know the real answer to the question, but if you were in the stomach, who would you vote for? I think I would vote with the rational guy. It makes a lot more sense. It doesn't make any sense. The rational guy makes as a lot of reason to what he's saying. Okay? Until, of course, the big day happens. 9 months has come, it's time for the birth. And guess who's the first one out? The Bechor is the Ma'amin. the Jewish one if you want to call him, the one who believes in tradition. He's the one who comes out, and finally he comes out of the mother's stomach. And as we all know, the person, the brother inside says, what an idiot. It's because he believed, he didn't hold himself in the stomach. He thinks that there's something out, so he pushed himself out, and he let himself go out. What a jerk. He's so stupid. I'm so mad at him. Now I'm all here by myself and I have nothing to do. He's dead, and he would tear Kriya, but he doesn't have any clothes. He's naked, so he can't tear Kriya. But he at least says that that's what happens. And at the same, simultaneous with the words of this little brother who's sitting inside of his mother's stomach, of course, the beck and calls of the words Mazal Tov, Mazal Tov, it's a boy, is standing outside, right? The words Mazal Tov, Mazal Tov is outside. And this little boy who has now been born to his mother has just found himself into a brand new world. This conversation is the exact same conversation that we shall hear from two elderly people who are sitting in a retirement hotel in an old age home. They have the same exact thing when they're in the middle of playing their bingo, and one's on the person getting his last number and the other one not. They're busy saying, this is it, buddy, bingo, and that's it, and bingo, it's all gone. Your number's up. There's nowhere after this. We're not going very much farther than this. This is the way it is. We've been here 70, 80, 90, 100 years, hopefully, right? We've been here, we had our share, big, nice, beautiful world. There's nothing more to what meets the eyes. And you know what? We've been around the planet. Baruch Hashem, we've been able to get satellites out. We have telescopes. We're able to see what's out in the galaxies. There's nothing out there. It's all gone. And the famous words of Ivan Gregorian, what's his name? Gregorian, that first cosmonaut, that Russian cosmonaut that went around. He said, I was up there. He was the first one that circled the world. The Americans were the first one to land on the moon, but he was the first one to get into space. This Ivan dude, I forgot his name, Ivan Gregorian, something like that, right? Something like that, in the 50s. Anyways, when he went out there, he said that I was up there, I've been in the galaxy, and I saw there is no God. That's what he said, like a good Russian, He said, I've been there, I've been proven that there's nothing outside of the atmosphere. We've been outside in the universe and the atmosphere, and there's nothing around. Okay, and that's what one old person says to the other, and the other one says, look, I don't know how we're going to survive there. You're right, our body is going to be in the grave, and I don't know exactly what it means that we'll be in the next world, but we have a Kabbalah, we have a tradition that there is something over and beyond. We're not here just as to live temporary life. We live in a gesher, a bridge of life. We live in a gesher, a chaim. We're here for a future, and we know that there's something over and beyond, and that's what happens. And it's, in my opinion, Stam, if I just mentioned parenthetically, it almost doesn't make sense that people could be so limited to see. If you don't see it, then they can't believe it. Because until a couple hundred years ago, people didn't believe, 500 years ago, people didn't believe there was anything beyond our flat earth. Right? When you go and you fall off the end, you fall off the end of the universe. That's it. They're on the earth, and you fall off somewhere. Christopher Columbus says, it flies in somewhere. Right? Until we found that there was a circular earth. And not only that, we've discovered in the past few hundred years that there are planets, 9 planets. Okay, so we know there's a solar system that exists. So Beseda, it's something we didn't know about before, but now we know it exists. But there's nothing beyond a solar system. And then suddenly we found the solar system, the 9 planets, that's Plato. That's nothing. Those millions and millions of miles to get to Pluto, to the farthest, pardon the pun, right? To get to the farthest planet, which we thought was, wow, a long time, that's mamish nothing. It's Ephes Sheba Ephes. To get to the end of our galaxy, the Milky Way, you have to travel 282,000 miles per second. That means in 1 second, I travel around the world 6 times. If I go in the speed of light, you can travel around the world 6 times in 1 second. Not hour, not minute, 1 second. To get to the end of the galaxy of the Milky Way, you have to travel 120,000 years to get to at the speed of light. This is absolutely ridiculous numbers. It makes your mind kind of like you start fizzling, right? Like the smoke starts coming out of your ears when you try to think of these numbers. It doesn't make any sense. And that's okay. We always understood there was the Milky Way, the galaxy, and ever since the 30s and the 40s with the Hubble telescope, we're able to see that not only that our galaxy is one of the smallest galaxies. There are tens and probably hundreds of galaxies which we haven't discovered yet, which is a humongous universe, which is not fathomable the numbers, that we can't even predict what it is, and that exists. And suddenly we see there's a lot more than what meets the eye. Okay, we finally discovered, you know what, maybe us little people that we thought we are the world, right, we are everything. We thought we grew up as we're not even a speck of sand. I would even say we're a speck of sand. We're not even a speck of sand in the universe, right? And a speck of sand is some mashudi. One of us is almost ephes when we talk about physically. In the spiritual world, I'm talking about, that's a different story. So we're so little, and how much we've discovered how much more there is to the world. It's a crazy thing when a person wants to go ahead and say, who says there's another world beyond this? It's almost ridiculous. Now in the world of Kabbalah, this is only in the world of Asiyah. There's 4 worlds in the world of Kabbalah. That's the Olam Asiyah, is the world of doing, is the world we live in. If you look at the Olam Asiyah is about this big. Then there's 3 other worlds, which of course I'm not speaking about now, but there's Atzilut, which is the highest world, Bria and Yetzirah, which are 3 worlds are above it. That means the Olam Asiyah is about this big compared to the world of Atzilut, which is humongous. So then Bria is even bigger, and Asiyah. Each world is bigger than the other. You understand? So we're dealing with an amount that we can't fathom, and that's fine. You don't have to fathom it. You just have to believe. You just have to know that there is such an existence. But if a person would do this, with this I'm finishing, by the way. That's it, I'm just going to finish. Then you'd realize that there's a lot more to this world, and it would change the whole gisha of a person in this world. Instead of thinking that I'm living for what I am in front of me right now, for whatever exists as a result of this second, okay? A person will realize that no, I'm leading towards some things. It gives me a purpose, gives me a yad, there's a direction, there's an aim, there's somewhere I'm going to. You understand? When a person realizes, though, it leads to much more of a positive appreciation for life and something that I need to do. We have something called a Harat Keva. Harat Keva, I'm not asking for any pledges right now, that's all I'm asking. Harat Keva are direct debits. When you put something every month into the bank, you give your shul money every month into the bank. I didn't say your shul, stop. Right? And you give every money into the bank, which is a kind of giving over every month a little bit. I give a little bit, I give a little bit, I give a little bit. That's what's happening with life. Life is every year, every minute, it's a little bit more, it's a little bit more, it's a little bit more. I'm slowly giving over 1/70th of my life, one more 70th of my life. I'll say 80th, it'll be nice, okay? One more 80th of my life, one more 80th, a little bit more, a little bit more. A little bit more is giving over, giving over. If we see it like that, then it's a little bit depressing. I'm still trying to figure out why people celebrate birthdays. Birthday's another year that I'm that much closer to the grave. That's not so exciting. What's the big deal? I'm not saying why should I celebrate that? But rather, if you realize that there's a purpose of where I'm going, if you realize that I'm here as a means to an end, I'm there to get to somewhere, so then I'm only counting towards something, that's fantastic. Like Sfirat Omer. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, I can't wait. I'm waiting to get there. That's so exciting. Now I'm not recommending to take a jump and get there fast. No shortcuts. That's not what I'm trying to do. But at least the idea of that I'm aiming towards getting towards a certain place. There's a purpose of why I'm here. Every year, that's the reason Chofetz Chaim celebrated his birthday. You know that? He made a cheshbon nefesh. He made a calculation of what did I do this year? How did I accomplish? I got 1 year closer towards my grade, but how did I accomplish? I advanced this much in my life. I graduated first grade. I'm in second grade. I graduated 1 more. We're always trying to look to do that advancement. When a person changes his perspective of what life is, when you realize we're living in a bridge, in a gesher, so it changes his whole perspective of everything about it. And then I'll end with a joke of the old couple that came to that. Did I mention this one? Just trying to remember. The old couple that came up to Olam Haba. They came up to the next world. Both the wife and the husband, they came to the next world. And they were saying, wow, it's beautiful up here, this is fantastic, and this is so happy. So the old man tapped his wife on the shoulder and he said, if it wasn't for all your healthy food and all your exercise, we would have been here years ago. What's the problem? We could have been here so long ago. That's what it is. But there's a certain idea behind that idea. You can understand. All right, we'll speak about it next time. This introduction is not finished. We'll continue next time.